Hello there, I'm joking. Hey everybody, it's Twisted, Miyake-Mugler, and I'm here doing another episode of The Plot Twist. Today's episode is very near and dear to me because I like to share real parts of my life when it comes to this show, and I really believe that I'm very heavily impacted by the community that I'm a part of. And the community that I'm a part of did not just appear out of nowhere. There's been a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of pioneers that have come before us. And there is a lot of even people who don't even get mentioned and get forgotten because of lack of documentation or archiving. So today's episode is going to be talking about the importance of our community spaces, the importance of our clubbing spaces, the importance of archiving in the Black community. And to do so, I have some really special guests today. And today is going to be much more of a kind of conversation.
What kind of conversation is that?
I know, what does that mean? What does that mean, Twisted?
This kind. It just means this kind. Okay, so hold on. Before we get to music, I want to read their bios first. Then I'm going to introduce the guests, but I'm sure you know who they are by now. So first, I'm going to start with all the way to, I'm assuming is your left. I'm not sure. I'm just going to guess. So we have Rose Ann Marie Bailey, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Honors, Bachelor of Education, Masters of Education, Rose Ann Marie Bailey, 1971. Was I supposed to say that?
It's all good. It's all good. It is what it is.
I just...
You're a baby.
Yes, but shout out. So, she is a Jamaican-born artist who began using photography as a medium to document alternative images of Black people that offered by the mainstream media. Toronto-based photographer Bailey is a graduate of York University, where she earned a Master's of Education, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and Education degrees. As an accomplished photographer and artist, Rose Ann has been working in a digital format for the past 15 years, but instills the aesthetics of a historical photographic foundation to enhance the final production. That was the Masters of Education right there. Her recent body of work documented over 12 years of LGBTQ dancehall scene in Toronto, right here in Toronto, which is why she's here. Her work is closely connected to her passion for image production of Black bodies, as this was her deliberate opportunity to capture memories, validate existence, and build self-esteem by allowing her images of her subjects to become a political instrument rewriting representation. Please welcome Rose Ann Marie.
Hello.
Okay, our next, right beside me, right here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, y'all. I'll let that come in a second. Courtney McFarlane is a Jamaican-born visual artist, curator, and poet whose literary work has been published in African, Canadian, and queer anthologies. A longtime activist in Black LGBTQ communities, he was a founding member of a number of groups that were forerunners in providing voice and visibility to Black LGBTQ issues, including Black Coalition for AIDS Prevention, Black CAP, and Blackness Yes, Blacko.
Yes.
The organizing committee for Blackorama at Pride. In 2018, he created the Legacies in Motion Black Queer Archival Projects and curated its first exhibition, Siwiya, in April 20... I did that right, eh?
Siwiya.
Yeah. That just came out, Siwiya, in April 2019. The exhibition unearthed and celebrated the political and cultural activism of Black LGBTQ communities in Toronto. Siwiya was exhibited at Band Gallery, which is at Brock and Queen. Y'all better learn your Black spaces, as part of the Myceum's Intersections Festival, and later remounted at Archives. Was this with the Archives?
The Archives.
Okay, the Archives with a Q-U.
With a Q.
Queer.
Yes.
Okay? His most recent curatorial project is TD's Black History Month exhibition, Joints and Junctions, which we're going to talk about today, presenting Hogan's Alley, featuring the film by Andrea Fatona and Cornelia Wynne Garden, and the photography of Rose Ann Marie Bailey Thomas. This spring, he will be embarking on the research and development phase of a digital archival storytelling project in partnership with Myceum Toronto. Please welcome Courtney McFarlane. Y'all. We got the people in the place. I heard you guys. I know you heard that Blacko. I know you heard that Blackness. Yes, I know you heard that Black Cap. These organizations and bodies that are still thriving right now. Thank you. The Rudity. My friends all know that Sunday night taping. They all do. All right, so my last one. I'm gonna read a little bit of the bio just so that I don't get thrown off, and then I'm gonna throw in my spiel. Okay. So Polly Perry is the CEO and event director at Polly Perry Events, co-founder of the Afro-Caribbean Vegan Market, as well as a marketing consultant. She has been a part of Toronto's community for over 20 years. She is one of the pioneers of the Black queer event scene in Toronto. Legitimately, okay? So I remember the first time I came to the club. Okay.
Careful of the story, what kind of story?
Okay, yes, because I actually want to even talk about spaces, so I should say the club space where it was. Poppies.
Okay.
Church Street. I just had missed, because when I first came out to the club, I just had missed. I think it was Manhattan.
Yeah.
I just missed it. I just missed it because everyone was talking about Manhattan, but I'd never been there. And the person that brought me, I'm not gonna mention their name. Okay. I remember meeting. Yes, they're still around, but not in. I don't really see them in the community like that. But I remember meeting DJ Black Hat. I remember meeting Sandra. I remember meeting Nadine.
Yes.
And I remember meeting Auntie Polly. Okay, and back in the day, first of all, it didn't even give Auntie Polly. We just started calling you Auntie Polly. I think I just started calling you that when I met Janoi.
Oh, no.
Because Auntie Polly, when I say Auntie, I always felt like you was one of the girls. But Auntie, Auntie Polly.
It's okay. I embrace it. I've taken it on. Because Slim Thick is the one that gave me that name.
Sounds so
She started doing it because I didn't like it, and she would do it all the time. And then I said, you know what? I have something for you. I'm going to embrace it.
Shout out my daughter, Slim Thick. Okay. So Polly, I remember at first there was a lot more of a division in as far as the parties go, between the gay boy parties and the lesbian parties, right? And then I remember a couple of, I want to say now, oh my God, 10 years ago, when I went to the first time I went to a Polly's party, grown. No, it was more than 10 years ago, Twisted. This was at I want to say Courthouse was the first time I went to a Polly party. And I was dating my ex at the time. And I remember walking into the space and gagging because, so we're used to a certain type of aesthetic and a certain type of feel when it comes to the queer scene because, of course, a lot of people are not down to work with us and give us spaces, give us all that kind of stuff. So we have to usually work with what we get, right? And we're very grateful. I'm not knocking any of the other spaces that we were in, right? But then I remember walking into Courthouse and actually being whoa, this is first of all, we're in downtown Toronto still, and I couldn't even believe that we're in a venue that looks like this in downtown Toronto. And the fact that we were able to have a whole Black queer pride. It was pride. I want to remember. I want to feel it was rambunctious in there too, with the
pride party or
it was one of the pride parties, even the one with the
masquerade or.
No, it wasn't the masquerade party because you had the host, the dread host.
Oh, that was Pride.
Pride party.
Yes.
And we were in there, and I say we were all just gagging. The place just looked so fab, and you started to really make, and I'm not saying this to read anybody or whatever, but you really started to make the girls feel like we can really elevate when it comes to what we do in the community, how we see our party spaces and stuff like that. And it just felt it felt classy, it felt upscale, even though it was still so Black and bangy and all that stuff. You still allowed us to be ourselves fully. We were always allowed to be rambunctious young queens on the stage and all that stuff.
You
we always had that place, and I'm so grateful. But it's doing it in this space and in this venue, and I feel since then people have been trying to catch up to your standard and catch up to the bar that you set for us. So I really appreciate the fact that first of all, what also I remember too is that you were not only doing promotion, and that's why I'm glad that I read the bio, because I would have been talking about the parties. You've always been working.
Yeah.
And this was something that you did on the side, which was also something that I noticed in you that I lived for so much, because a lot of people were doing the community stuff more on a full-time basis, right? So for you, it really gave labor of love tease, because you didn't really need the coin and shit like that. Like, you're working well, taking care of yourself well. Like, we could see that on you. But the way that you were, like, so generous of yourself to the community, we're standing on that right now. You see what we're digging for. You see what we're striving for. We're trying to be like you. It's no shade. So, Auntie Polly, please welcome Polly Perry of Polly Perry Productions.
What? You're gonna make me cry. You're really gonna make me cry. Thank you so much.
Welcome, and thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
for having us.
Yeah.
Yes. Just to give a little bit of backstory on how this came about, guys. They had an exhibit, Joints and
Junctions.
Junctions. Can you guys tell us a little bit about the exhibit? And
I actually have to give ways to Courtney. So Courtney had reached out to me. He knew that I had a collection of work. I don't think he knew how extensive the collection of work was. So I started doing, photo booths within parties back at Share Good Love with
SGL.
That's
And they were the first ones that kind of said, okay, come out with your photo. And my system was so crappy. Like, I had like this black curtain, the velvet curtain that I set up, that I had set up, and my one little dinky lights that had dropped so many times by people knocking it over. And I really just tried doing it. And in all honesty, I really have to big up Lisa Bailey. So Lisa Bailey was doing dance hall, like regular dance hall scene. Plus, on top of it, we had LGBT people in those dance hall spaces already, but didn't feel necessarily as comfortable to express their sexuality. So I had worked with Lisa Bailey, I think probably, I don't even know, I think it might have been early 90s. I was working at the AIDS Committee of Toronto, and somebody had reached out to me and said, there was a gentleman, he just killed himself in a basement, and he had his HIV status, and he was bisexual. Not a lot of people knew that. And so what they wanted to do was a dance hall space and education around HIV and AIDS. So at the time I was at AIDS Committee of Toronto, got Black Cap involved in a number of different other promoters and organizations that were in the straight dance hall space to be able to kind of give some information. I had done some work with Black Cap in the past, and the idea was to actually now try and reach out to this straight dance hall space. But then Lisa was also showing me her work that she was doing for years, like almost 20 years in the straight dance hall. And I was just like, I'm a photographer. And it wasn't a way of like, oh, let me try and compete or anything like that. Some of it was like, you know what? They don't have this in, like, I went to the Manhattans, and I went to all these different spaces that were, I had gay friends that embraced me to be able to come in. And so I wrote a paper and I shared it with Courtney. So at 40 years old, I was doing my master's, and I was doing sexuality. And part of the conversation was around culture and sexuality. So we talk about the dance hall, we talk about the murder music, we talk about all of those sexuality stuff. And then you have these dance hall spaces within the LGBTQ communities that were playing these music. And it was confusing, because I was just like, but wait, you guys are saying that you guys are trying to shut these things down, but then, you know, David Lewis was the person who said, you know, you have to see this in a different way. You have to see it as a reclaiming and being able to, as defiance, to be able to do that. Resistance, right?
Some of the music, right?
Yeah. And so the idea that when Eric and Franz and those said, come out and do some photography, I said, this is an opportunity to do that. But it was really a way to capture the images and give it back to people. And so I think at the time I was charging either $2 or $5 a picture. And it wasn't anything to say, oh, let me make money. It was really like, here's my minimum cost.
Right.
Be able to give it back. But the reason why I started into photography was my mom I was adopted when I was like 5, 6. My biological mom died around 12, when I was around 12. I didn't have a picture of her. Wow. And so the idea of having a photograph of somebody to actually document people's existence was something that I thought, let me give back. And that's one of the reasons why I did photography. And so to be able to do it in the dance hall spaces and also give back to people, there's some times where I would take photographs of people and not charge them, but let me take your photograph because I love what you're wearing. Let me document.
I've seen you do it.
Yeah.
I've seen you do it. Some of my girls even have some of your free pictures at West End. Yeah.
True. And I started this thing where I was doing magnets, and so but like Dollarama magnets.
I still have some of those magnets on my fridge.
Right?
Some of my best pictures.
And my favorite photograph of a group of friends is one of those fridge
Me
magnets.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
At your event, Young
At
and
the
Eglinton.
Phoenix?
Young and Eglinton.
Oh my God.
Was that brilliant?
Yeah, 6
Six Lounge,
degrees.
6 Club.
6 degrees. Wow.
Just north of Eglinton.
Oh my goodness.
And so when Courtney said, let me take a look at your stuff, let me choose some things, we're talking about erasure of space. And it's funny because I've been taking these photographs for over 12, 13 years, and I've never shown them. And so it was a commitment that I made with people. So I know that the space that people came in, they had other lives outside. And the idea of that exposure of that other life was something that I didn't want to disrupt. I didn't want to actually break. And so, Polly had mentioned that, make sure you get permission to be able to do these things. And so as much as I had tried to kind of gather people as much as possible to say, can I get your permission to actually show? And I know some of the individuals, as people passed, I also didn't feel the right that I can now show their photographs because of the fact that I was holding this. And in all honesty, like even Coco, who died in 2020, I have pretty much, like, I would say about 20 images of her. And I'm feeling like I'm the keeper of this, but not really sure what to do with it, and want to be able to be respectful and do it in a way. So even the pictures that are being shown through Band Gallery, I didn't want to make money off of it. So what I said is anybody who buys it, the money would go to Black Cap as a way to give back to community, continue with the counseling, be able to do whatever it is that they needed to do. And so in all honesty, it was just an opportunity to be able to show the documentation of these individual lives that are so important, and to be able to show them. And when I say show them in a way that some of the times individuals don't feel like they're being seen. And this was an opportunity to say, 10 years later, some people I've still been able to kind of show their picture and like, oh my God, I can't remember that. And they look different because they've grown up. They're now like 10,
Or even
12, 13.
transition.
They're
Yes.
transitioned, right?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that was, I just want to say thank you, Courtney, just even for the thought and the inclusion of this. So that's where this kind of came out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, Joints and Junctions at Band Gallery was a TD Black History Month exhibition. And Karen and Claudia, who were the staff, the artistic director and the lead staff at Band Gallery, connected with Hogan's Alley. And Hogan's Alley is a historic Black community in Vancouver that was disappeared. So for the early part of the 20th century up until the the late 60s, Hogan's Alley was a community of Black folks that had institutions, had churches, had businesses, had residences, and, but always under-resourced, always under-serviced. And at some point, the government structures saw it as blight. This is like a ghetto, we need to do whatever, and they want to build a highway. And so they tore down a part of Hogan's Alley, and eventually were able to save. It led to a movement to actually save that part of the area, but Hogan's Alley was disappeared as a result of government action and decades of neglect. And so I was presented with this incredible video by Andrea Fatona and Cornelia Wingarden, and I was like, okay, this is Vancouver. This is a Black community that had been,
That's crazy.
basically raised. And the film the video, Hogan's Alley, actually documented folks remembering Hogan's Alley and shared images from archives. So the CBC archive had videos. The Vancouver Library had some images that they ended up putting together to basically tell the story of Hogan's Alley. And I'm not sure how I got from Hogan's Alley, but it was the notion of communities that are invisible, communities that are precarious, that live with precarity, right? That they're vulnerable, they're marginalized in ways, and as a result, they are vulnerable to being erased, vulnerable to being made invisible. Anyway, long story short, I often end up at Manulife Center to go to there's a grocery store in the basement. So I go there often, and I often pass this condo that used to be where Manhattan's was located on Balmoral Street.
Yes.
And somehow I was thinking about what would be the Black queer corollary or thought around or connection to this notion of invisibility and disappearance and precarity. And I remember thinking, I remember when this used to be a dance space. I remember when Polly and Janet, you know, the divas, we call it that time. The two divas used to run Manhattan's. And I remember the energy of the club. I remember the energy of the club on the street in front of the club. And that building is now, there's a condo there and there's a dry cleaner where that space used to be. And then that was when I thought about, okay, there are lots of spaces that I remember that are important spaces in Black LGBTQ communities that are club spaces, that were transient, that were only there for a period of time and now they're gone. And, you know, as somebody who's doing archival work, you know, where are the documents of these clubs? So, you know, where are the club cards? Where are the flyers? Where are all those sort of pieces that would let folks know who weren't connected to it that something happened here? So there's the tangible things, the material things that are documents of a history and that tell a story of a community. But then, you know, what we generally have is the embodied archives. So the stories of people who partied at Manhattan, you know, who got into a quarrel with their lover outside the club.
Who snuck into the club, would drive by 5 times to see if there was anybody out. That was that period of time. And,
no shade.
You know, I'm so glad that you were able to do that, because I have to apologize. You reach out to me so many times, and I just, you know what? I have nothing from Manhattan. From the first piece of Manhattan, right? When we built this place, you know, because the interesting thing is, you didn't take pictures at Manhattan.
No, because
that was the safety.
Because it was a safe space.
And we were, let somebody pull out, because that back then it was just, you know, camera phones had just started to come around. This is 1999, 2000. Let somebody pull out a camera and talk about they're taking video or pictures. It's a problem. I respected the space. We didn't take pictures. We didn't do, I think I have one or two, and I couldn't find them now even if I wanted to, of outside. And these are people that have taken pictures. Like, oh, take my picture or whatever, that kind of thing. And that was like on your little Canon. It wasn't a camera phone back then.
Right.
But you respected that.
Of course.
And I wanted to touch quickly on something that you said about, you know, when you reach out to me, I was like, please get permission, because and people come at me, oh, why didn't you post my picture? And why didn't you post my picture? Because you know what? I only post pictures of people that I know are okay with it to this day.
Yes.
Right? And people are like, oh, you didn't post my picture. Well, first, I don't really know you. But if you want your picture posted, I can. I literally go through every picture. Not so much now because it's kind of open now and people are taking... It's not just me. But back in the day, I would go through every single picture and say, no, he doesn't want his picture taken. Put that aside. Oh, I can see this. No. You know, I see something in... You know, and that's the kind of work that you have to put in to protect. But it's so sad, because if you were not at Manhattan in the early days, it's so easy for that to be erased because...
And so the piece is photographs are important.
Yes.
You know, the little club cards are important. But, you know, there are those things. There's the material things, but there's also the embodied archives. So the story you're telling now, and you are documenting in this piece, is history being documented. right? And so I think that's something I deal with as somebody who's interested in archival work is not just the physical manifestations or paraphernalia connected to events and histories, but also those embodied pieces, the stories that only you know because you've been there. And then other people will add to and say, well, no, you forgot so and so, or no, that's another club.
Or stories that Nadine knows.
Yes, or the story that you told
Only Nadine knows
going into the courthouse at the first time, right?
Yes.
Those are also important pieces that need to be shared. And so thank you for this opportunity, and
Yes.
thank you all
Thank
for creating this.
And thank you for the work that you do in archiving. Actually, I remember being in your position, even though it wasn't like so long ago when TKBA was just starting. And we were still younger, living with our parents. Most of us had that whole issue of not being able to be out and post those things. But we were still so heavily connected and engaged already with the queer community. Like, we were already going to clubs, we were already doing that, but there was this idea of leave no trace. And when you were, even as the organizer, you are now thinking, because you're literally trying to think of everything that even the patrons are not thinking of at the moment, right? Like, somebody might come back to you, like you said, 10 years later, and might be like, that picture that we had taken, like, way back, like, I might not be so cool with that. And you have to really consider, do I want pictures at this event and stuff like that? When the balls first started, we were thriving on this idea of DL. Nobody's allowed to take pictures at the ball. Put your phone away. Da 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 da. Like how you, like how you just in the happy side of Manhattan. We were doing that at the beginning of balls, but now we're looking back with like this deep regret. Like, does anybody have any videos or any pictures of the underground ball in York University hallway where we were in a hallway having a ball, and all of us are like dying so much for that because we talk about it, and as we're talking about it, the kids can hear of the experience and just know it was one of those balls that they needed to be at. So they're just like, is there any footage? Is there any pictures? And be like, no, we cussed everybody out that took out their phone. Like, we told them it was a thing, and it's a rule that we had as a whole community that nobody can take out nothing, no documents, no pictures.
Because it was about safety.
Yeah.
That's what
And
we
I love the
wanted.
piece that you both talked about, which is really about consent. And so when you're feeling vulnerable and feeling unsafe, and you created spaces that made people feel safe to be who they are. And so you need to be really conscious that, whatever you produce or document from that space needs to be something that maintains that and respects folks where they are in terms of their journey.
I even had to change the flyers and stuff that I would do, because with Manhattan it was just, and the jokes, I have one left.
Oh, you have it? An original?
An original.
Okay.
That's all you needed to hear.
Next year,
That's lovely though.
And you know how I
would
got
love
it?
to see it. I can't wait to see
You know
it.
how I got it? It's actually a patron who comes to all the events. This person comes to every single event, and she said, "Hey, Polly,
I want to interview probably too.
I'm gonna write it down now. Either get me for next year, right? But comes to all the events, and she said to me, I have every flyer that you have ever given for every event. What? So I said, no, you don't, because she was telling the story how somebody made a comment, and she was like, this woman, she's a hard-working woman, and this and that. I wasn't even paying the person no mind. And she said, I have like 8 flyers from her first party. Every time she see me, she give me one, and she's telling the story. So I said, if you bring me those flyers, you get in free to every event that I ever host. The boat cruise too? I said, yes.
Right? I'd go for
Okay? I said, if you bring me
Maybe that's
every...
a value
And
of-
she brought me a box with every single flyer, and I was just floored. I didn't even have some of that stuff.
It's a gold mine.
It is, and she wanted to keep it, but she gave me the duplicates that she did have because I didn't have it. Because you're doing these events, and like you said, I've always had a full-time job where I'm traveling a lot. It takes up a lot of my time, so I'm doing these events and I'm cutting and going through the marketing, everything that needs to be done, the booking, and I'm not archiving anything.
No.
And I need to do better.
You're not alone.
Right? I need to do better because I didn't have any of this stuff. And here, this wonderful woman had this stuff, and she didn't give me half of it because she only had one of most of them. But that's how I got it.
And this is the other piece. Like, sometimes you may not have it, but there are people like me and some folks I know who keep everything.
Right.
Everywhere they go, every little ticket stub, every little flyer, every whatever. that they have it. And you know, Manhattan is actually, there's an article in Now Magazine about Manhattan.
A recent article?
No, this was back in the day when Manhattan was actually running.
I think I might have a clip of that somewhere.
Yep. There's an article in Extra Magazine that profiled you and talked about Manhattan.
Word.
So there are things that are out there.
Okay, I need to go back to
Yeah,
That's what I need to do.
I have the Now
But you know
Magazine.
what's interesting though, because when you're saying that, I'm just thinking about the person that kept all of it and the feeling that they had probably to go into a space where she can find other women like her. So like the value of the event placed, like there was so much value in it that she
kept
had
it.
to keep it.
Yes.
And not
Yes.
just this one, but every single one. That is like, I got chills when you just said that, because I'm like imagining like, yo, this is when people say like from the beginning, like they were rocking with you from the beginning, like
It
from
really
the
was.
beginning. That shit is so fab. And to see that, like, I know that you probably were not expecting her to actually come back and show you all the things. And when you seen it, you're probably be like, oh my God, actually, I want you to come to every event for free, for real, because oh my God, like you made me really feel so, I don't like appreciated as a promoter, because you're not thinking like, this is going that far.
No.
You know what I mean? For somebody, but like when you see that, like this is real tangible stuff that could show you that people really, really value the work that you've done because they're holding on to every little bit of it. And like, that's so dope. I really hope that, you know, we'll get some to see some of those images in the future, because that's some great history.
And in terms of the embodied archive, you know, is really to have a conversation with you and Janet.
Yeah.
That's something that's
Let's make that happen.
yes, that will happen.
Would love
But you know,
that.
it's an important thing, because when I did Suya, I had club flyers, and I had, I had some from Black Cat, I had some from,
I remember
from the
seeing
women's
them.
parties, and you know what was really interesting about them? They would have a date and a time and a location, but what would be missing?
Rainbow.
No,
What?
the year,
Oh.
because you know in those you know it was assumed that this is something you're doing for next week.
Yeah.
This was happening. You know, so there's no.
Dashed it.
People aren't thinking about history and all those sort of things, you know, because you're trying to put it out, get it out, blah, 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 blah. You're not thinking about this has some historical significance, right? There's an importance in keeping this, because you're just trying to make the thing happen.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when folks keep things and you're just trying to figure out, oh, what year was that?
I know by the length of my dreads.
See that?
First few flyers I was on, and my dreads, I was like, ooh, that's 2000, that's 2001. What was I wearing? What size was I? I was like, oh, you know.
Lucky you,
Oh, wow.
because you have been like growing your hair for a while, and you've been transforming and all that stuff. So that's dope.
Must be nice to have hair.
Okay, like if that's what we measure time.
I could do it too when I had hair.
Right, that's bullshit. Okay, so I actually do have some questions for you guys. I can't believe that we didn't even ask one yet. Let's get it together. But we're so okay. I'm so sorry. So we spoke a little bit about the Joints and Junctions project, but we didn't actually talk about the collaboration here. Too tough.
Well, a little bit. I think we did.
Yeah,
In terms of how it started was really Courtney reaching out.
And then just literally connecting with you after finding out about the images. Okay, so then we can skip over that a little bit. I want to make sure that these things are given to you guys just to make sure. You know, we didn't have a structure, even though we're free-flowing and Black people, you know, that's how we do. We talk and we free-flow. But I want to make sure that certain things are brought up, because I want to make sure that these things are shared with you guys, because there's some things that I really, really want to talk about. So, Polly, since we're talking about spaces right now, I had a question for you. What did you actually notice, like, in the community before you actually threw that first event? I don't know, like, I don't know if, like...
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
Okay, so yes, what did you notice? And let's take us back to that first event.
I came into, I'm not super politically correct, so I came, you know, you want to talk about, I don't call it the straight world, but the straight world, I came into this community, you know, I was excited, questioning myself, the whole new world, oh my God, I could be myself, you know, and one of the things I noticed, I love music. You know, my father he had a big song, he was a big deal. I grew up around music. I love music. I love to see beautiful people. You know, I love that, right? And when I came into the community, I don't like a division, and everybody has their own opinion, but I like to party with everyone. You know what I mean? I have brothers, I have sisters, I have friends, you know, of all genders. And I was never used to going to a space and having the split, right? I understand it politically. I understand it in terms of taking up space. People have explained why over the years. And I wanted to create a space where I could have both because I love everyone. And there's a certain dynamic, and you mentioned it earlier in my parties, where it's like everybody's there and none of the women have ever said to me that they feel like the men are taking up too much space. And that's what I used to always get. And I never got that because one, I was a bit of a tomboy. Two, I always hang out with guys. I don't feel like people are taking up my space. I didn't get that portion. I understand it, right? So one, I would go to Pope Joan, and then I would pass Red Spot.
Okay, because you said Pope
Right.
Joan.
Yeah, well, this was like...
That's a spot? That's like
It was
a
a spot,
Parliament?
something like
Where's Pope
that.
Joan?
And it was in a house,
Yeah.
right? It was in a house, and it was could I say it was a lesbian place, right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just women.
It's a women's space.
Women's space, right?
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was it?
It was Parliament north of Carlton.
Yeah, a whole...
Is that the one that used to be the Rose?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, the Rose, okay?
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction, where I went there. One, I didn't hear the music I was used to that I love to hear. They played one and two, maybe Sean Paul, Red Wine. Two,
red wine.
I didn't see, you know what I'm saying?
God.
Nightmares
Why is
from
that
high
the
school.
song?
That and Dollar Wine with the soca.
Yeah.
But, you know, so, and I also didn't see, and again, everybody likes what they like. I didn't see a representation of the women that look like me or that I liked, right? And again, everybody likes what they like. And as I'm going out there, I'm young, I want to meet people. You know, you want to create a little hype. You're like, well, this is boring. You know where we would get our hype? Janet's basement parties. That was where you would see, that's where
Yes.
I went there. I was like, oh, there's black women like me. Wow.
And there were similar parties for men.
For men.
Yes.
Right?
I won't call it like Joe.
Okay, the
Joe's
mansion.
parties.
It's no shame.
So parties were often in private spaces.
Private, underground
Yeah.
spaces. You
Yeah.
had to know somebody
Yeah.
to find, because if I didn't meet Janet, I wouldn't have, you know, I met Janet and I was always good with marketing, business, that kind of stuff, and she knew everybody. So it was a perfect combination at the time. So to answer your question, I didn't see people like me. I didn't hear music like mine. Red Spot was Guanin, but it was like, don't go up there, there's only men. I'm like, so? You know?
no shame.
And I realized that there was a whole world of these beautiful black men and community. You know, then I was introduced to the trans community, which I've never come across. And I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's so beautiful. I want them all in one room.
Right.
How do I make that happen? And that's why I started to go out and look. And Janet's reason, I hope I can speak for her, she couldn't hold anybody else in that basement. She would come down and say,
She run out of
stop
space.
hitting the furnace, stop.
Oh my God. Yes.
And Janet would come down and she'd be like,
It's no shame.
stop it. And then she said,
a
Polly, I
good
gotta get these
impression.
people out of my house. Right?
Oh
So
my God.
it was really wanting to see people like me, hear the music that I was used to, you know, the reggae, the R&B, the hip hop, the house. You know, Black Cat used to kill it up at Red Spot, but then the women wouldn't go up there. And then there was the trans community that was also afraid sometimes to go out, and there was a safety issue, and where do they fit in? Not with the girls' parties, sometimes not with the guys' parties. And I really wanted to create that space, right? And then as we go into, you know, people have come down on me for my dress codes and for my expectations. I was like, okay, well, I'm not saying you can't come, but this is what I am trying to create.
Right.
It's not because the owners of the venues made me do it or whatever. I don't let people tell me what to do. It's because of what I wanted to create. Because of Manhattan, when I started going to Courthouse and I had the dress codes, we used to dress up for Manhattan. There was no jeans and people dressed up. That's what I
Just for the
remember.
hell of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it was a Saturday night that we would go out and people just put it together. So that kind of followed me, I think, along, you know. So hopefully I answered your
Yeah,
question.
you definitely answered my question. And before I move on too tough, could we go through some club names and just shout them out, like some old spaces that might like people might not even have heard, don't even know what the hell like
What
you're
was Miss Lady
saying.
Rose?
But yeah, you just said some clubs that I've never heard of,
There was Togethers.
Poppies.
There was
Red
Katrina. There was Katrina. There was.
What's that place at Dundas? It was I went up there once and it was I passed it the other day and I was telling my friend about it. Dundas and Church, and it was upstairs. And, like the corner.
You know, the people in the audience are shouting out the names.
What's the names? Right. And you go upstairs and it was a really dark, dingy place. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah.
A little bit. I really was. And then I was
101 Tasmanian Ballroom. This is back in my time. You know, there weren't. You see, one of the issues is there weren't really black-owned spaces.
Right. That's why I was gonna say
there were nights,
It's like the Pussy
right?
Palace.
The Pussy Palace was a bathhouse. It was a bathhouse. Night.
For
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There was 6 degrees that I did, and these were spaces like you were saying, not necessarily dedicated space. Well, dedicated for the time. Like I try to establish good relationships. Like Courthouse closed because they got sold to Toroni, right? Clubhouse, 6 degrees. What's the one? Suba Lounge.
Yeah, Shallow Lounge. Shallow Groove. 10 names.
Shallow Grove downstairs. That was a nice spot.
Yes,
Hacienda turned into a something else.
Rec
It was
Room.
right.
Yeah, but it used to be called Hacienda.
Not the barn. It was like the barn, and then we had it for a little while, and the owner died. The owner got some scandalous death thing.
On Church Street.
Yeah. And there was a party there.
The Marquis of Granby?
Yes.
Yes.
But it was called something before that.
The Barn.
That's the barn?
Yeah, Stables
Okay,
Barn. Barn
there
and
you go.
Stables.
Oh, Comrades. This is back. Comrades was on Isabella, next to was it Chops?
Isabella.
This is 80s.
Oh, okay.
You know where Rabba's is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Rabba used to be that space used to be a gay bar, and the
Near
space.
Fly?
Fly was on I think the other side of the
Gloucester. Yeah, it's on
Okay.
Gloucester.
He was on that. It was on the same side that Rabba's on. There used to be a gay bar called Chops. One of the first gay bars I actually went into in the early '80s
Whoa.
when I was in high school. Seriously. And next door was another space. I forget what's there now, but it's over just a little bit west of where Chops was, just a little bit over from Rabba's, and you go upstairs, and it was a club called Comrades, and it had a stainless steel dance floor, and it had a mirrored ceiling.
Good for spinning. Good for spinning.
It was beautiful.
When you're lit and you're
I have to tell
dancing,
you-
looking
Yes.
It was a spot, and so folks dressed up to go there.
Yes.
And it wasn't particularly it didn't have a black night or whatever, but lots of black folks went there, and it was there that I actually went to see Sylvester.
Oh, word.
You know my real Sylvester?
Yes, I know. I
In
do know.
1987, exactly a few years before he died, he had something called the Living for the Sea tour. That was his big song or album at that time. And Sylvester came, and Sylvester was like my idol from I was like a little boy.
Wow.
In the disco 70s, looking at him on TV and seeing something that spoke to me.
Yes.
As my mother sat next to me and said, is that a man or a woman? As he did this whole thing. And so, Sylvester was near the end of his career and his life, but he was incredibly significant. And so we came out to see Sylvester, and I was there with Douglas, and Sylvester had this big black fur and so on did. Anyway, long story short, I have a button from that night at
So you are
Comrades.
I'm gonna send you my
You're the keeper.
I'm
You're
just
the
gonna
keeper.
lose it.
Comrades, the Living for the City tour.
You know what? Speaking of the old spaces, I did have a question that I did share with you guys. I hope you guys had a chance to think about it. Of some of the songs that were really thriving in those spaces. Like when you think of those spaces, like a song might come back to mind because it might have been the top song in that era.
Beat that bitch with a bat.
What club? What
Beat
club?
that bitch with a bat. Manhattan. When Black Cat
no
or
shade.
Cashmere or Andrea Ennis would beat that bitch with the bat. And they just
beat
looking
that
for me.
bitch
I'd be
with a
like,
bat.
yes.
Beat that bitch with a bat.
Listen.
Right.
That song song
no shade.
stays in my mind till now. Even my last birthday party, I asked Black Cat to play. I was like, you know,
brings you back.
and that memory, yes, that song stays with me.
Nice.
So, I mean, I actually made a list.
Nice. Yes, please. I want to think of this is important to me. Like, this is very important to me.
And, you know, and so for me, because there's some of us who, like, you know, like disco was like our, you know, as children, when we imagined nightlife and adulthood and glamour, it was like disco music, right? And so, you know, in the 80s, even when they were playing others, you know, in the morning, they'd go old school. And so, like,
You
Taste
really
of
do have
Honey,
a list.
Taste of Honey, Boogie Oogie Oogie, Evelyn Champagne King, Shame,
Oh, yeah.
Diana Ross Love Hangover, of course, Sylvester
Yes.
Mighty Real,
Wow.
Donna Summer Last Dance, First Choice, Let No Man Put Us Under,
Okay, I'm there with you on all these songs.
Runaway,
You send me this,
Liliana.
I need to make a playlist.
Yeah, this is giving it to me. This is
And then we go to the is it the 80s or is it early 90s? Sounds of Blackness, Pressure.
Ooh.
Grace Jones, Pull Up to the Bumper. Jocelyn Brown, Somebody Else's Guy. Gwen Guthrie, Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent.
You got J.O.B. if you want to be with me.
Of course, you know, if Black Cat was here, this was for him. Like Phyllis Hyman, You Know How to Love Me. Teddy Pendergrass
Black
version
Cat.
of Don't Leave Me This Way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on.
Wow.
Yes, keep going on.
You can send that to me.
Like, I really
Soul
love
to
this.
Soul, Soul to Soul, Back to Life.
Oh,
However do you want me?
Oh.
However
do you need me?
Anyway, so those are the songs.
Yes.
That's just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yes. How about you,
It's
Ro?
actually really funny because similar. We were in Scarborough. Malvern is where I lived.
I lived in Malvern.
My parents had the basement parties with the beating of the furnace and
Yes.
and the neighbors calling the police on us and everything. But as a young child, I was in that space and seeing that music, and so growing up in that black space, and the flyers were the little cards printed with no images, no nothing fancy,
That's weird.
and so but grew up
not a year.
in that party space, and actually now looking for something that just resembled something. And I think for the Manhattans and all the other spaces provided me with that. It's interesting because, you know, one of the perplexed thing that I had talked to David about was just the fact that you all are playing Log On, but Step Punch Ichiman. And I'm like, I couldn't fathom it. I'm like, how is it?
It did play.
Let's talk
It did
about it.
play
Let's
at
talk about
Manhattan.
it.
But it really did.
I remember being at parties
I
dancing
was
to Boom
shocked.
Bye Bye.
Yeah. It
I've
did.
done
They all
it.
played.
Boom Bye Bye. Oh, girl, down here.
Yeah.
Why am I down there?
But in your essay,
It was the defiance, and it was for me to understand how is it that these things are being played in this space, and it was different, and it embodied differentness, and it was actually a way of resistance, and it was just like, for me, I was just like, okay, and not reading it from the normal way that I would in a straight space, right? But being able to celebrate the defiance of saying, you know, all you guys are singing about Batiman List, look at what we're doing in here. And this is,
To the
we're taking
same
our,
song.
to the same song in the same manner. And whatever you say about us, we're just stepping upon it. Like each step that people made was defiance. And I
It
was
really
just
was.
like,
I live for
It
that.
really was.
there
I live
were
for
terrible
that.
lyrics, but the beats were incredible.
Okay, what do you want us to do? Like ignore it?
And
We
then
need
there's
to- we
the
want us to dance to
cultural
it too.
struggle,
It's
right?
no
shit.
I was having a chat with a friend of mine, a big promoter actually. I was having a chat with him, and it's just that whole. We grew up in that. Like I said, I
Right.
grew up. You see, my father's days, they didn't really talk about that as much. You know what I mean?
What's that?
Like my dad.
What did they talk about?
It was a lot of, there was, you know, Badman stuff. There was like Nitty Gritty and Tenasaw, and, you know, there was Bob Marley. There was the dancehall people. Maybe Dandada just came along. Maybe Super Cat was young at the time. I was watching a video the other day of a long time event, and Yami Bolo was a baby. He was a kid on the selector I didn't hear a lot of that in the music.
Of the homophobia.
Yes, the way it is now, because a lot of the songs, a lot of the old reggae songs were very social and political.
They were conscious.
Yeah, they were conscious about, even the Badman songs, you know, it was very political, right? And then they started with all this violence. And before the Bun Me thing, it was Nyam Pum Pum. That was the big thing.
Bowcat.
Bowcat, we shot a bowcat. You understand? And shot this a boy after that and blah blah blah. In Pharma, every year is something different.
In Pharma, right?
You know, where they want to kill somebody every year.
Track.
Now everybody's doing it, and it's like they're on to the next thing, and they'll be on to the next thing soon enough.
Yeah, I've been in. I have to say, I have been in straight spaces, or I call them mainstream spaces, where queer folks are there, and they've played those songs, and I have, with my friends, gone up to the DJ and asked them to take it off.
Yes!
I said letters.
Yeah.
I said letters about that.
I have.
In the straight spaces.
To a certain extent,
In the straight space,
it also
you're encouraging
changed
something.
how artists were now, and reggae artists were now
Yeah.
recording. They were, what they would call censored or whatever, people were now having to now stop doing some things. I think there's resistance and things are coming up now and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily see it in the same violent way as it used to be within a certain extent, right? Or being played
because people organize, stop murder music. You know, we can call some names.
Yeah.
People organize, and it became a thing. It became a thing about you know, hitting them in their pocketbook.
And
or
that's
stopping
when
them
they
from
say,
performing.
Or getting a visa.
Yes.
Right? They couldn't fly
said,
and perform anymore because, right? Yes.
So, you know, as folks who get marginalized, there are ways in which we sometimes internalize some of that shit that we get given and normalize some of that language and that music that is very much a part of our culture, even though it's anti-us.
Yeah.
Right? So I loved when I read your essay piece where that young man talked about being at Manhattan and hearing that music, and I was really interested in the way he talked about it and thought about what it meant for him and his friends as Black queer identified men, Caribbean men in this space, hearing and dancing to that music.
Yeah, because when the Murder Music campaign first came out, I was actually already clubbing. I definitely was clubbing, and I remember that's why I remember it being a thing. And when the first was brought up in conversation, I was giving very I guess it comes with the territory of dance hall, if that makes sense, right? So I was always okay, they're never really gonna get through with this thing because it's just so ingrained in the culture. So it didn't make a difference to me.
It made a difference now, and now it bothers me. It didn't then. And that was my young defiant side too, because I was there when it came on. I would, I could see the energy and that defiance. I could see that in the youths in the club. Now it bothers me. I have reached out to large promoters and venues because I know a lot of people in different communities, and we respect each other. And you know what? I have to say that a lot of those people in the mainstream community, they reach out to me for guidance too, and they ask and they talk to me about stuff, and I point out stuff to them. Not in the way where, not in a aggressive, but in an educational way.
Right.
Well, I'll say, listen, you don't. I remember writing to a promoter one time and outlining everything. I went to a huge party and I said, I want my money back. Because I counted 2 songs that you played. I go to this event and I don't want to put anybody on blast. I go to this big event all the time, and I said, you played 2 songs that you did not need to play, and you did not need to forward because the party did shut. You don't have to do it. And I said, I am not trying to change you. I'm not going there. I don't care, but I want my money back. My friends want their money back, because if you think that you are not we don't support you. I said, I was in that place and I knew half the people in that place. So if you want me to reach out to my community, I can. It's not a smear campaign. I'm just letting them know that you don't want them there. Let's make this clear. It's either you clean it up, 2 songs. I'm not asking you to change anything.
Because that music makes the space, because it's part of our community, right? So we don't just go to LGBTQ space. We go to broader community spaces, and we have a right to feel safe in those spaces.
But my street friends are uncomfortable. I'm used to it. So, and I feel a way, so I take that time to go to the bathroom or something, because now I'm feeling some type of way. But my straight friends stop dancing, and they feel well, they're not really cool with this, or they're kind of You know what I'm saying?
It's not okay.
It's uncomfortable, not just for me.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable for everyone who is there.
Yeah.
And it's good that we now have allies, right? So it's not just us saying we have to cut that off.
When we were feeling weird about it, like we used to feel weird about it, but nowadays, even when we do feel weird, they'll stand up in our space and look at you and be like, but isn't...
There was a meme about that,
Are you really gonna allow this...
Are you dancing to this?
Are you like right in front of you? Right. They're like, aren't we supposed to be mad at this right now? Like, I'm glad the times have changed. And I actually wanted to mention that, like, you mentioned being on both sides of the same thing just now, like when you were the young, defiant one. And of course, in your heart, you still had the same feeling. It's like we're still trying to do progressive work. And that looked different in the future when you were older and on the other side, but in your heart, it was still in the same place. Right. So, people like do things in a certain way now, but in a couple of years, things might change in the world, and people change, right?
We can change, we can grow, we can be educated.
And both of it was, to me, done from the right place, and it looked two different ways. Yeah. But I just wanted to, I'm glad you mentioned like that juxtaposition. I hope I'm using it in the right context.
You are.
Absolutely.
Brilliant minds on this panel. I like how you brought that up, and it showed the two different sides of it, though. I think that was really powerful and important to speak to. And just because I also don't want to go over time, I did have something else I wanted to ask before, because we're actually really, really close to that time. Oh yes, we just spoke about some of those songs. Yes. No, Courtney, you did actually mention already how you first discovered your love for archiving. You used to just collect little things you were saying. But can you go back? Can we talk about that a little bit?
I don't know if I had a love for,
Well, I wouldn't have
called it a love for archiving. I was just, maybe it's the Cancerian in me, but I just keep stuff.
Oh, you're a hoarder. A hoarder. That's what you mean. Okay, it's bad.
That's funny.
But from a child, like every little thing, the little card I used to get from my teacher saying, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." I kept everything.
That's beautiful.
And as an adult, things I would go to, things I would see, things I would like, things I was in or was a part of, were all things that I somehow kept. I wouldn't file them any kind of particular way, but I would keep them in a folder. I put them in an envelope. And then I noticed when I actually went to do the CWIA exhibition and was going through my archives that I had every year I had a folder that had stuff.
Everything.
And then I have friends. So some of us do it. Like a photo album is an archive.
Yes.
Right? So we all have it. Some to some or lesser degree. Some people just like, if it's done, it's gone. If it's a year later, I don't want to see it. So there's some people who are very much like that.
I try not to be like that.
But I think about my friend Junior Harrison. So when I went to do the CWIA show, Blockorama and IMN, that was a Black gay men's group in the 90s, were important parts of the show. And, Junior, for the number of years that we were part of the core organizing committee for Blockorama, had an album for every year that we organized Blockorama that had notes from meetings, flyers, posters, all our correspondence with Pride. Like,
that's fab.
Gold. There's a beautiful image of us doing a walk. We're in Queen's Park and it's the AIDS walk. And beautiful image that was actually in Share magazine. And so I have this old copy of Share. Share. Caribbean.
Wow.
Yeah, this was in the early
queer people.
Early 90s.
You better fucking
early 90s. They had this image of the group of us.
My church.
Yes. Yeah. And your barbershop.
Yes.
And your Caribbean grocery store.
Yes.
So in 1991, this beautiful photograph is there, and I had this old Share. I'm just like, what am I doing this yellowed old Share? Flip through it, and there's this beautiful photograph of a group of us at that walk in the family section. So just above our heads is this big thing that says family. And I was talking to Andrea Fotona, who's the video maker who did the Hogan's Alley thing, who was my consultant when I was planning CWIA. And I showed it to her, and she's like, Courtney, sometimes you can contact the magazine or look for the photo credit, and you can find whatever. Anyway, I followed her advice. I found the name of the person who had taken these photographs, Stephen, I forget his name right now. White man, Canadian, who worked at Share for over, I think, almost like 2 decades.
Wow.
And had negatives.
Yes, us photographers don't throw anything away.
of every
real
single photograph he took for Share magazine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the image of Willie Ninja, when we did
the one that was referred. Yes.
Willie Ninja, when Aya did we had a party for him when he came to launch Paris is Burning. Those were taken by Stephen, and he had. So I said, well, this is a photograph for one. He's like, oh, what else do you want? So I explained the product. He's like, oh, Willie Ninja, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He had. So it was collecting and keeping memorabilia basically, and it wasn't until I was actually starting to connect with the archives, which was formerly the Lesbian and Gay Community Archives, now the Archives. That this notion of the archive as an institution and archiving as a practice that is political and cultural as well as this historical, that I recognize that the things that we were keeping were important documents.
Yeah.
Because they tell a story.
Those photo albums as well. Like I know, as a photographer, as I said, like I have binders of all my negatives.
Yep.
So as a photographer, we keep those. And as we go into digital, I know that people will use their phone and do their stuff. Print them.
Yes.
Costco, Walmart, anything, print it. Because the fact is that those memories, as you change over phones, as things get deleted, they get stolen. As I was mentioning before, like I had 4 hard drives that were stolen in a break and enter, and the people only wanted to erase it
And use the
use it and sell the hard drive to somebody else, right?
Because all that space on it. Probably.
It's 'cause of space, right?
Right.
But the loss of those, the memories that are lost. And that's why those photo albums are so important, especially if anybody has old family members who have Alzheimer's, print their photo album because the tactile process of actually going through helps them with their memories.
Yep.
Wow.
So print your stuff, print them out, put them in a photo album, just keep them safe and just keep that.
When we
Thank you
did
for
the
that.
Siwi exhibition, up the second floor of the band gallery, there was a table, and on that table I kept
the book with the pictures of Blockorama.
Blockorama, Black Cap, Aya, all those photo
Gagging in
albums,
that book.
and that was the table where people were most. So you see images of people sitting and pointing
Just
themselves
right.
out. There's a story of a man who used to be an Aya who. Karen was there one afternoon, and he had gone into the gallery, and he was sitting around the table, and she was in the office, and she could hear sobbing.
Oh.
So she went over to him, and he was there looking at the album, and he had his finger on the photograph of, actually it was Duchess.
Oh.
He was a close friend of Duchess. And just the whole, you talk about the tactility, the sensual, the whole piece around the physical connection of this object, triggered his memories. And she texts me, I'm like, was he going? She said, oh no, he was okay. He actually wanted a copy of the photograph. But for me, archives are only useful if they're useful.
Right.
In terms of sharing history, in terms of triggering memory, in terms of people sharing stories. And so for me, archives have a point and purpose. That's not about institutions just having our stuff locked away and filed away for people to come and study.
The library.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because I'm a huge history buff, and one of the things that I love to do is go through physical archives. I love going through any papers, books, just pictures. I forgot what you call those. We had them. Now I'm aging myself. We had them in high school at the library.
Oh,
and then
Microfiche.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? Like, wow.
Yeah.
What you're saying. It's so
And and
true.
historians, when they're going to tell the story, so when Andrea and Cornelia were making Hogan's Alley, they relied on archives. And when I did the artist talk with Andrea, one of the stories she told, which I thought was really interesting, was that she went to the Vancouver Library to look for information around Hogan's Alley, and she was looking for images of Black people, but they weren't filed as Black community or Black blah, 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 blah. They were kind of sort of randomly located, and she had to go through and kind of discern and try to guess and to kind of locate blackness within those archives
Wow.
because it wasn't identified.
Yeah.
Right? Because we are missing. So the archives, you know, these formal archives don't have us in there.
No. And we the erasure of human beings
Yes.
and the people who we will miss or who have passed. And, you know, working at Black Cap, we tend to have those photo albums, but, you know, that institutional memory, if it isn't passed on, then it's from one move to another move, and
gone.
people don't necessarily see that as important or throw away this because it's not part of that. And it's this disposability
Yeah.
of individuals as if they never existed.
And the work of individuals. When I went to do the exhibition, I had the Aya banner. I had, you know, fabric from Blockorama. I wanted to find the the original Black Cap banner that we marched with in the early 90s. And I couldn't find it. And Shannon said, you know, Courtney, I think it was one of those things that was lost when we did the move because somebody saw that work. Somebody saw that and just said, oh, this old piece of cloth. just dash it away. And I remember thinking, you know, I spent how much time sewing it, screen printing it, you know, all those sort of things. And to think that somebody is just throwing it away because it wasn't important to them.
At that time.
Yeah.
Right.
And understanding legacy too, right? I think
Yes.
we're so, even when I think about like the stuff that I've done, and you know, you talk about Blockorama, and I don't know if you guys understand how important that event is. Like how I look for coming out as a young person in this community. How I when we used to be able to go and everyone could go. Right? There wasn't the beer gardens and, you know, the restrictions on age.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff.
grannies, the little babies.
Right? That was one thing that I would never miss, no matter how hungover I was from my parties or how messed up I was. Like, I've never been to the Dyke March because I was always drunk. I was
Right,
always
so thinking the
hungover.
night before.
Hungover,
something,
party, you know, it was a party the
12
night
p.m.
before.
March.
You know, you were doing your dance hall things the Friday nights before too, after. Like, it was like, you know, so, but it was so important because it was the one place that I would see everyone. People that I didn't see all year long, I knew that in that space, I would, and you could take your whole family.
Yeah.
At the time. Now, you know, you got to be 19 and over, etc., whatever.
It's,
but
it's a different space, but it's still a significant
It's-
space.
yes, it
So
is.
for me, I will
Yes.
say,
It is.
for
It
me,
is.
Pride is Blockorama.
that's what it is for me.
You know,
is.
Yeah.
'Cause
and
that
I-
was the only space we had.
that was, you know, it's a public space. It was an accessible space. Maybe a little less so now, but it still serves the same purpose.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
For me to see the range of us.
Black
But the
people's
question is,
generation.
how do we now make it so that it remains that way? And we've probably outgrown that
A long
space,
time.
right?
That's a whole other
That's a
discussion.
whole other show.
Yes. But I have to say, you know, Blockorama has celebrated maybe a few years ago its 20th anniversary.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a crew of folks, you know, we know their names,
Yes.
some of them, who have been carrying
Yes.
and doing the work of Blockorama and battling with pride,
Red.
you know, to keep that
Accommodating.
space because
Yeah.
that space is so significant. And I think whether the space is like big as Blockorama or small as a club night, they're all important spaces for us.
Yes.
It is. And when I talk about legacy,
Yes.
as we, you know, we had the whole social movement in 2020 that's continuing into 2021 in terms of, you know, BLM and a lot of the different things that are happening in terms of awareness. One of the things that I'm so strong-minded about is if we're going to change anything, we need to rewrite the history books for the next generation. That's where it starts.
They call it counter narratives.
Okay. And this is a part
It's
of
a
that.
thing.
You know, it starts from archiving because all these communities, all these Black communities, queer history, you know, we've got to start documenting that and putting those things, Hogan's Alley, you know, different communities that were, I forgot what the community is called, but there was a huge, thriving Black community in downtown Toronto that they talked about.
It was called the Ward.
Right?
Yeah.
These things need to be put into the history
Where there are
books,
lots of black folks at the Ward. Yeah.
right? History needs to be rewritten to include everyone, and not just Black people, but everyone
Proper
that
history.
was excluded
Yeah.
over time. And this is the only way that we're going to bring everyone together and have everyone understand that everybody's made a contribution.
Yeah.
And that contribution needs to be included in the history books as we go forward.
Yeah.
And the work that you're doing,
Is
both of
making
you,
sure that it goes in the damn books.
is going to be a big part of this.
It's happening now.
It's happening.
You know, and the piece is, you know, we're talking about archives. For me, archives and exhibitions are really about telling stories.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's past the time where we have our story told by people who aren't us.
Yeah.
So there are lots of folks, you know, not just me, but there are lots of folks who are in all their different ways, including creating art, right? Including doing this kind of thing that you're doing, Twisted. That we're telling our own stories.
Yeah. I think the other part is that there's a value to age, right?
Yeah.
Where some of the times, because the images of these youth at these parties are so young, that there isn't a value to them because they don't have the institutional wisdom or they don't have the experience, and it's so easy to dismiss them because of their age and their representation. And the fact is that the documentations that I hope coming out of this is being able to see these individuals as holding space and making space and to say that we belong here and we are worthy of being represented regardless of how old we are, and being able to kind of say, let's document them, let's put them, let's give them back their images, because they're the ones who will feel that self-esteem to say, yeah, that's me, that's how I look 10 years ago, and I'm still going to take that. Right?
I actually do want to take some time and actually go through the slideshow.
Some of my favorite images.
Looking at
Let's
it
focus
too.
on, let's take a look at these pictures. So I actually know them.
Yes.
Shout out to the three of them.
Can we say names or?
Yeah, so I saw the names on the bottom, so I'm
Yeah.
going to say the names that they wanted to be addressed as.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Chino, Alex, and Duran.
Yeah.
Shout out to three of them representing the 242 from the Bahamas.
Them still them on the place, still representing, still hot as ever.
And I remember, like, it's dope, even for them, because they were, like, brand spanking new back then.
Yeah.
And, like, now they're really, really, like, adjusted, comfortable, you know.
Found community.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? And so looking back at that picture, but it's dope, though, because they're still friends, the three of them. And, like, that's nice to see. Can we keep going through the, let's go to the next picture, please. Okay, this is a beautiful one to start with. Rest in peace to my sister.
Yes.
The lovely Samaya Dalmar.
And her boyfriend
her
had also,
boo,
had passed.
Prince Bradshaw, rest in peace. I actually knew him from the ballroom community in Buffalo as well. So that's when I first met him. And I knew Samaya before she even was living as a woman. And seeing her transition, it was so funny too, because watching her transition, when we talk about people, how we might want to dismiss them or devalue them at first, right? Like, I must even call my own self out, because, like, when I was younger, was, like, real extra sometimes about a lot of stuff, right? And me and her and her older self at first, like, we were always cool, like, I was always cool with the girls, whatever, but we would have some arguments and whatever. And then when she decided that she was going to become Samaya, something in our relationship really actually changed. Because I saw her, I don't know, something was just different about her when she became Samaya. And our relationship changed, like, for real. I guess, like, it sucks that we had, like, it took time for me to, like, see her as something, whatever. But when you're young, you're ignorant, you know, you're trying to be the baddest bitch in the club, so you don't really care for anybody else that's bad, right? So, yeah, hold on, go back to the picture that just passed, please.
It's another one of my favorites.
The one this one?
No, the previous one.
Right, the previous one. Sorry, could you go back to the previous picture, please?
2 seconds. It's on slideshow mode.
Oh, it's on a slideshow.
Oh, it's on a slideshow.
So we're gonna just go,
So we can't just manually go back?
I mean, we can give it a try.
Yeah, can we please?
Is there a keyboard?
Yeah, let me just jump on that right quick.
Okay.
Sorry, folks.
It's okay.
No worries.
And this is see, yo, let's see if we were to see the three of them now.
Listen, and you know what? When I look at the
And rest in peace,
slideshow,
Samaya.
I just feel family.
Yes, thank you.
Like,
Thank you.
I still speak
Go
to
back
all
one more?
these people.
There we go.
Nifa.
Nifa
Yeah.
Fitas.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And the thing is, I don't see her too often
Those girls used to run the dance hall scene.
They used to
too, you know.
run
the dance hall
club.
scene. Yeah, when those girls walk in the club, you know.
For real. And just like, and the thing about going to the club though, that was so interesting to me. I guess I thought that I was gonna feel like the dance hall would give a different energy. When I would go into the dance hall gay parties, it feels like you're walking into like a real dance hall party. It just might be on different bodies or whatever, because some of the guys might wear something different, but girls like Fitas would give
Trust
you the
me.
real
We kept it
dance
authentic.
hall Okay.
Yep. And when you brought on
my
your stuff
God.
too, you continued the authenticity.
Yeah, trying to make it raw.
Okay.
Like, girl, we don't care about how fast you want to dress us. Dress for dance. Just to skim out. Okay? Look at that. Look how Steve Pasa on her in the tights.
And that was a sheer
Hey, listen,
tights.
you couldn't
That
touch
was a very
Pasa, you know.
Okay.
Pasa was dancehall, you know.
In the heel like that.
Heels.
Do you remember that?
Pasa's calm down.
Oh
Pasa
my
was
gosh.
dancehall, you know. You couldn't touch. Hey.
Shout out to Pasa and shout out to Raleigh, now
Yes.
King, who's actually a music artist.
Yeah.
Doing
Yes.
the thing internationally between LA and Toronto, doing like driving for his dreams. So seeing that is dope, man.
I love this. I love this photograph.
Yes.
Because I see love.
Yes.
You know, that kind of connection.
And I have so many of these love pictures. It was amazing. And the idea is that people pose how they wanted to.
course.
Yeah.
You just presented yourself as, and maybe 4 or 5 pictures. But it was really up to, I guess, what we would call formerly the sitters to be able to say, here's what it is. Take this picture. I want this picture.
This says
There's so much you
Pandora's
see in
Box.
there.
Yes.
Is that their name?
I don't know if they want their other name.
No, sorry. So there are they like so there are a couple, right?
I don't know.
No,
Right.
it was
Okay,
more
sorry,
of a
okay,
promotional.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
no problem.
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. No problem. Coco, my sis as well.
yes.
She actually just passed last year.
Yeah.
Late last year. Rest in peace, Coco. That was a girl who was always, like you said, ready for the camera.
Listen.
Yo,
what's her name?
never spoke much.
Hilton, like Paris Hilton.
Never spoke much.
I have so many pictures of her, and one part of my essay that I had shared was multiple pictures of Coco as she went through her
yes.
different stages. And Coco was one of these people that when she came in, I was just like, just let me take your
That's
picture.
it.
I'll give you the thing. You don't even have to pay. Just let me give it to you.
And so quiet.
Yeah, she really never spoke much.
Yeah.
She really was the girl that if she's talking, she's gunning you.
Yeah.
It's one of those. like she never really spoke much. Coco, but she was like she has a big presence about her. I even
beautiful.
I met her when we were like I was just like 16 or 17 when I met her at House of Monroe time. At first we used to be voguing in Seven's house, and her, Pooh Bear, and O'Shane would come. And they would come by, and then she was still already the quiet. The attitude never changed, No matter, even though the physical form changed, the attitude was always the same. Like that attitude, that really sassy, quiet attitude, she always had up until the end. So
And she brought it every time she came in front of the camera.
This is another one.
Oh my God!
I love this one.
Catalia.
Oh my God.
Catalia.
Another person that embodied dancehall.
To the T.
Okay.
The outfits, the short shorts,
And body.
the crop top.
I didn't even gonna lie, because sometimes I had to take a second look from behind. Like if it was from behind, I was like,
The body was
I have a couple nieces and nephews that sometimes if I see them from behind, I have to be like, oh hi.
Right.
I didn't know. Right?
Heavy.
Listen,
That's how we love him. How we love him. That's Cassidy.
Oh yes.
That's one of Toronto's only Toronto-born dancehall kings.
Can you talk about core and body control?
And the fact, can we talk about the fact that he can do everything from
And
then
it's not like a 19
until
back?
now? Let's talk about
While
that.
the rest of
He's
us are
also
aging.
an 89 baby, so he's born in the same year as Twisted. Let's talk about that. And he looks like he's like 24.
That was a good year.
And he still looks like that.
And he still looks like that and moves like that. There's Catalia and Pasa.
Yes.
These were my
Yes.
favorites. Like these were my muse. There was a couple other like Rez was also another one, and that was just like every single time they were like my muse. I have such great images of these individuals.
Because of the whole art of their presentation, right?
Yeah, so they
Creativity and
they
the
did it for that reason.
styling.
Yeah.
They actually did it for the reason. Oh, they're like, oh, someone's taking pictures now, girl. Let's dress up now, baby.
They knew it.
They knew they came to every single event
On point
with their, and they made their outfits. They created their
Yes.
outfits. They pieced their outfits together.
Yep.
Yep. This one was Caravana. That was Caravana.
Wow, I'm really gotta get all these pictures of Catalia and Pasa, man. This is really taking me. This is taking me through it. Red carpet. Oh my God, I remember this year.
Yes.
That was not a good year.
Keep moving. Remember the
parties that year.
It's
Let's
no
keep
shame.
it.
Yes,
no
it's
shame.
part of our history, darling.
Yes.
It's okay.
But
That was a
we had
year.
a good time.
That was
We
the-
had some good parties. I have to
That's
say.
for sure.
Yeah.
But you see, this
This is the real shit.
is the work of the archive, right?
Yeah.
This is the work
You
of
look at the
Thank
pictures
you.
and it just
Memories
invokes something
and-
inside of
and-
you.
Yeah.
one of my favorite images.
Yes, shout out to them. That's when I saw Duran, Alex, and Chino.
And you know, it's the tongue sticking out that makes that picture.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Just that one move.
And it's interesting because I have different pictures of different events, and if we actually put them all together, we'll see the personas and the
different attitudes for that
different
day.
attitudes
Yes.
and- yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
It's
I know what
performance,
that's
right?
like.
And,
It
and
is.
playing.
Yeah.
Playing with presentation.
Yep.
And I look through, I watch, and I see. I talked about earlier about family, right? And sometimes I look through my phone. I keep stuff in iCloud, and sometimes I look through. I go through my hard drives, the older ones, when I'm trying to clean them up, and I see pictures of myself and of other people, and I'm like, wow, we're all growing up. We've all grown together. People that went through school. I was telling a young man the other day. I won't say his name because I don't know if he. And I was saying, happy birthday. I was saying, you know what? I've been watching you since you were 17 years old. I'm so proud of you. And I went through everything that I've been watching him do. And he's like, wow, Auntie Polly, I didn't know that you were watching,
Yeah.
And there's just so many of these young people out there that you just watch them grow.
These
You know?
spaces were not just spaces
No, they weren't.
of dancing or whatever. It's spaces of kinship.
Yeah.
Family, because a lot of
Family,
people don't
yes.
have
No.
family. This is it. This is all we have.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and sometimes all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? So these spaces and the archives, you go back and you look at it and you're like, this young woman would call me almost every morning.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got this iPhone 12 and it messed up why I lost those messages. And I think it was because she knew that I was one of the few people that were up so early. Rise and grind, Auntie. What are we going to get that money? That was her thing. As she had transitioned and the difficulty she went through and obstacles and changing her life and going through the next phase right before she passed, unfortunately. It's like, you go back and you look at these things. I talked to Nifa the other day, a quick message on thing. These young men, I see them all the time. It's deeper than we even know.
Yeah.
And it's not until we get into this kind of environment where we start talking, where we realize how much this means and how much we really mean to each other.
Yeah.
These
spaces are not just about dancing.
Yeah, at all, not at all. And I thank you guys for all the work that you've done as one of the pioneers, and as one of our archivers. No, I mean that for real.
Wow.
Seriously, because of the work that I'm able to do today. I wouldn't be able to do it if you guys had not done the work that you have done before. So we're literally just continuing in the path that you guys started for us. So
Legacies in motion.
Legacies in motion.
And thank you for that.
Thank you
For that. And you as well. I know you're back there.
Yeah, you're doing big things. Are you kidding
Yeah,
me?
you guys are doing. It's
I
amazing.
appreciate her so much. Trust
Yes.
me. Like you guys can like I said, I always say powered by CrownMe TV for a reason. So before we close, I would like to. There was one last thing that I put down in here, and we kind of skipped over it that I didn't. We're going to use it to just say our last words. But if you can think about, because you were talking about being older in the community, if there's like a person, because let me show you how I came up with this, by the way, because I was watching Grindr has a YouTube channel as well, and they have this thing called Older Gays, right? It's a great series. Like at first I thought it was like supposed to be a key, right? But then I actually watched it and I watched like every one of their videos, and they're talking about like one of the videos. Basically, they're talking about like aging, actually talking about it and looking at old pictures of themselves, like in their teens and 20s, with some of their boyfriends that was then that might not be around now, or like friend that was like a best friend that's not around now, something like that. And they kind of just spoke to it because it's a part of life, right? And it's like when you're young watching it, it makes you you feel a lot of anxiety watching it, especially when you're seeing people dying around you, that because we already know that everyone's going to make it to the age that you guys have made it to, right? Or even my age, people haven't even made it. Oh my god. That pic. Oh my god, shout out.
Let me tell you this crew now. I can tell some stories about this crew, but I won't.
Well, as we age, I just like I said, we just feel this anxiety that comes over us when we're seeing people dying, and in the world, like the way that the world is going. So hearing people hearing the stories of people who like made it through like their entire lives essentially, and that is just a part of their story. They were just able to just like and just talk about it and just kind of thing. So with that, in that energy, because I just found it so fascinating for them to like just share a little whoop whoop. So I would love it if you guys can just share a memory that you might have with an old friend or an old lover. They don't have to be a past or nothing, because they were not all past in the video. But just some, like an old memory of something.
I have one. A Trevor Gray.
Oh my God.
From Black Cat.
Yes.
And
shout out.
He has been a mentor. He's been an incredible force in my life, even as I started working at Black App and volunteering. And it's actually interesting. He's allowed me to take not one photograph, but I had a photo session with him. And I'm actually thinking about that now, that I never gave it to him. I was looking at utilizing some nude images, and he trusts me enough to be able to do that. And not a lot of people trust me. When I say not a lot of people trust me, in a sense of, it's hard to get people to say, yes, I'll model nude with you, right? And obviously, I keep that trust and not expose that for anything. But he would be the person that got me into the work around HIV and AIDS, and the work at Black Cap, and being able to the importance of having incredible family and chosen family. And I'm also coming from where I grew up in the Children's Aid Society. And so I was always this person that walked around without family, right? And so Black Cat provided that for me. And so being able to give back, and also seeing a number of LGBTQ individuals and being able to see them in the space, but outside of the space, and being able to kind of just hold space for family. And I think for Trevor, that has been my grounding. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I would have to say, I'd have to say Janet. Because we joke about this all the time, when I ventured into this community, I met her at the road. I get a lot of my PR skills and ability from her, just being able to walk up to people and talk to them and, make them feel comfortable. She just came up to me and just started talking to me. And, there's still a lot that I don't know and I don't understand. And she was so patient with me as a friend, through me being a part of this community, navigating the community, navigating business within the community. Always trying to do the right thing. She just, anytime I had a question about anything, because I was just learning, right? Whether it be about, experiencing sexuality, or, I could just always talk to her about everything. And she was always so open and always included me. Anything that was going on. Polly, da-da-da-da-da. Even sometimes where I didn't feel, I talked about being an introvert. I'm very much that way. She would say, you have to come to this, get up and come. I know you don't, because I would rather just be home. But even tonight, like me saying yes to this, it's not that I don't know. I think it's because I read Year of Yes again. And I was like, okay, say yes to things, Polly. It's not that I don't want to be here. It's just, I'm like that. I'm a bit of an introvert. And she just took me under her wing, and up to this day, I can still call her and say, Janet, what's it, blah, 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 blah. and just speak straight to Polly, you can't say that like that. Make sure so you don't go to a road and say it like that. You know?
So you're a PR person.
Yeah, to this day, and taught me a lot about business and community, everything. And the other person is, he's passed away, Malston Anderson.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I remember, I'll tell a quick story. I have my family. I'm lucky enough to be one of those people. And I remember every year he would ask me, he taught me about, this is when, no shade to anything, but this is when I witnessed true outreach in the gay clubs, not just dropping off the condoms because
It's not shade at all, honey.
Because you want to come
shade.
into my party. I stopped answering calls after he passed away, right? He would come in and actually speak to and engage with the young people. And often I'd hear him say, "Me nah look here, no. I am just letting you know," like, you know what I mean? Because of course you approach
They're gonna
it,
think
you
that,
know.
yes.
So I would hear that speech in the bathroom all the time and be like, "Oh yeah, Anthony is talking to some," you know. But anyways, one year he would invite me for dinner every year, Christmas. He had a dinner at his home, not a very big home. I think it was a 1 or 2 bedroom, and he would have a Christmas dinner every year. And every year I would miss it. And this is people. And I'll say this, I'm glad this is public. If I don't show up to something, it's not because I don't like you, I'm throwing shade, I'm upset or whatever. It's either I'm doing my introvert thing where I'm in a mood, because that happens, or I can't make it, or I'm traveling, or I'm working, right? So I would always go home for Christmas, so I never come. So the one year, him said, "Cho, me have my Christmas thing, but me not invite you because you never
Not
come."
come.
And he was very direct.
Yes.
And I said, "You know what, Anthony? Actually, this year, I'm not going home for Christmas." And I came. And let me tell you something. People were sitting on each other. And women said, food.
I've been there.
Young people that
Yeah.
have nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go.
Okay? Container. You're leaving with a container too.
Yeah.
You ate and you're leaving with containers. The vibe, the energy, some youth, all age groups, male, women, men, trans, everything.
He just gave. He gave.
He gave and gave. He was the first person to teach me about, you know, just HIV within the you know, women and some of the things I needed to do to protect myself. And but I think so because you just that you need, you know, he would really, so he made a difference because he was one of the people I could go to, you know, for outreach, information. He was always there for you, always there for the community.
He was.
Like when I say people on top of people, you know. And nobody giving a care in the world. Everybody's having a good time.
He did Christmas, Easter, like anything.
That's beautiful. That's one of the things that we're missing in our community, actually. We don't have people doing that stuff like younger people. That's why I see Bahamas, that's why I talk about the Bahamas, the Bahamian crew. They do their own thing when it comes to Christmas. And I live for that so much because of the same thing. Like, I just know that they're missing their family and all that stuff. So them doing that is doing a lot more than just coming together for Christmas, right? So like I live for that. I believe that holidays should be there should be a lot more in the community happening around holidays, and I guess like we're just experiencing the void because the person is no longer with us, right? Thank you for mentioning them. Rest in peace, Malston.
Yeah, for sure.
Courtney.
I'd say Douglas Stewart.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Douglas Stewart has been my mentor and friend since I started to come out in the early 80s in high school. Douglas took me on my first gay bar tour.
Work.
One night after a Zami meeting, he's like, "Okay, let me take you around." So Douglas Stewart, and connected with Douglas Stewart are 2 women, Makeda Silvera and Stephanie Martin. Makeda and Stephanie had a home. Makeda still has his home on Dewson Street. And if you see Philip Pike's film, Our Dance of Revolution, he talks about that home. And that home, Douglas lived in that home, Debbie Douglas lived in that home. There are all kinds of people's names I could call who lived in that home. And that space was like our Black queer 519.
Wow.
It was from that space that Zami was organized, that, you know, like a lot of things that we ended up created, you know, came out of that space because Stephanie and Makeda opened up their home to all of us who had homes but didn't feel warm or welcome in them. So I was leaving Malvern to come and hang out in that space. When we planned the International Lesbian and Gay People of Color Conference, Toronto edition in 1988, we organized from that home. The organizers took a photograph in their backyard. Sister Vision Press, the first Black women and women of color press in Canada, for how many decades, was run out of that home. And so I can't talk about, being a Black queer man and organizing and archiving, creating art or whatever, and not talk about the role of Black feminists like Stephanie and Makeda and the importance of their role in terms of building the foundation for how we organize, how we work collectively, and the kinds of things that we value and do. So, those are, a few names that come to mind, but I could go on.
That's really beautiful. Thank you guys for sharing those names and those stories and for being so vulnerable with that stuff.
Absolutely.
That was really selfish of me. I just wanted you guys to do that because,
That's a great question.
What about
there's
you?
something
What
so
about
beautiful
you?
about
What
that.
about you?
Turn around.
Didn't think about that, did you?
You already wrapped up.
Hey, I really was. I had the whole spiel ready to fall off the tongue and everything. People that inspire me.
We put you on the spot.
Oh my God, no.
You can do a part 2.
I do have it.
Okay.
I'm fully lying because I was going to do something for Black History Month to shout out these Black people. And I actually wrote it all out. Yes. This is so funny. So I put my uncle, because he is pastor of the church, and him as a leader, I've always tried to emulate just the style of speaking and like that whole pastory vibe. I always got it from him. I grew up wanting to be a pastor and everything, and I was always emulating my uncle. I never had my dad like that, so never had my dad in the spiritual world, let me say it like that, because my dad wasn't Christian. My uncle was the one that I was looking up to as far as spirituality. So, him. Community leader, I put Douglas Stewart. And Jill Andrew.
Yes.
Douglas
It's
Stewart,
no shame.
you said all the things that he's done, and literally for those reasons, I live for Douglas Stewart. I'm so inspired by him, and I want to impact community, on the level that he has, because he's done it for real. Okay, not like the surface impact that girls talk, nah. The work that he's done is felt right now, 30 years later, right now, we're still feeling it. That is what I want to, that is the kind of impact I want to make. And he's an Aquarius, like me, which means it's supposed to happen.
That's really what it is.
Fine.
That's
It's an
what it is,
Aquarius.
really.
That must be
Okay.
it. That must be it. Oh my God, Twisted, you. I don't know how I moved this now. Sorry. Yes. And so you guys know I'm part of the ballroom community. So a person that I have I have a couple of people in the ballroom community, but my primary role model in the ballroom scene, he actually doesn't even vogue or anything. His name is Michael Roberson. I worked with him on curating the Journey to Black Liberation Symposium. So I've worked with him before. But before that, he was those bigger ball projects like your POCC, which was connected to MAD, which is the something of African descent. Oh my God. In New York City. Sorry, a couple of organizations in New York that were doing that work in ballroom spaces.
GMAD or
GMAD. Sorry, let me say MAD. Sorry,
Gay Men of
GMAD.
African.
You got part of it.
Man of African descent. Thank you.
Yes.
So he was working with them to do some PLCC stuff. And he's the one that does when it talks about doing that community work that you're talking about in the club spaces that Malston did. Michael thinks about how to create those things in ballroom, and he actually is the person that started and created the 3MV project, which we did in Canada.
Yes.
He's a brilliant man, and I look up to Michael Roberson, who's also an Aquarius. I swear that's not the reason. I swear it's not the reason. It's just a thing. But yes, and then for voguing, I look up to Leonie. Leonie Maldonado. Everybody knows who she is. But as far as her in her career and not rushing anything and literally waiting for it to be waiting for timing to happen, not just rushing anything. Even as far as, she's a trans woman, and there was a lot of mockery done to her because she wouldn't just feed into getting body modifications, right? Because she's a dancer, she always wanted to have that dancer's body, so her focus was different, right? And now we're seeing that she's getting so much benefits from waiting, if that makes sense. And now she's getting the celebrity life, and the doctors are coming to her that are professional and blah, blah, blah. So the patients just took her on her way because of the talent that she already had in her. Like, the world is her oyster because of the talent that she really has within her. And I'm so inspired by that. Yeah, I really like your talent will make room for you. Your gift will make room for you. Like, I believe that stuff so much, and seeing people that have live that out inspires me, and that's why I live for her. And I don't have no celebrities or nothing like that. There's like all the people that I'm inspired by. I'm sorry, I know them
in your life.
Yes, I know them somehow, some way, because I really do take inspiration from the life around me and people around me. So when I say things to you guys, I'm not just like picking it out of my ass or just saying it for like lip service. Like, I can.
You were never that guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was never that person. I don't waste my words. I don't waste my words. I mean what I say because I'm inspired by it, and that's why I'm so glad to have you guys come on the show today, and share the stuff that you guys did. And I hope that people who are watching can see the importance of creating spaces, archiving, and documenting, because years later, when we're looking back, we want to be able to look back at something. We want to be able to look at something and have feelings invoked with us and spark conversations that just, never end, because we're always correcting each other, and, somebody might have forgot something like you said. So my encouragement to everybody that is watching this is to see the importance of documenting. And remember that when you are documenting, you don't necessarily have to share it, right? You can just document it and hold on to it, because everything has some sort of value in somebody's life. So documenting, archiving is very, very important, because you do not know who might not have been able, to take some kind of note or picture or something of the opportunities. So whenever you can, take a picture, save a flyer. When you see somebody doing businesses, when you see somebody coming back for doing something in the business and you see them going on their way, you might be able to archive something for them. Little things. Thank you all again for being on the show today.
Thank you, Roseanne, for
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys for living the lives that you've done. And this was the episode of The Plot Twist. I don't have no big shady end, because there's no shady end to this. This was just a great ending. Thank you all. And that was The Plot Twist.
Thank you.